Welcome back to Ramblin' Mosey, and this is part 2 of our special series from the Michigan Outdoor Summit. In 2025, we left the bustle of the summit floor and settled into a more personal conversation with two of the most thoughtful voices I know, Dan Wanschura and Ian Solomon. Together, those guys dive into storytelling, community, and the ways our outdoor experiences shape who we are. So, if you're on the treadmill or in your car, maybe stop, find a comfortable spot, take a breath, and join us as we mosey into a deeper dialogue.
I feel like we're at church here, you guys. Nobody in the front row? Come on. My name is Dan Wanschura. I'm the host and executive producer of Points North. It's a narrative podcast all about the Great Lakes region. We're produced by Interlochen Public Radio here in northern Michigan. Check it out if you haven't already. You can listen, subscribe wherever you find podcasts. And I want Ian to introduce himself before we jump in.
Thank you, Dan. So glad to be here. Can we get like a round of applause for everybody who organized today? Major work. My name's Ian Solomon. I am a Detroiter. I'm an artist, a journalist, an organizer, and I really kind of snowballed to this space today, kind of unintentionally, but what I realized was that outdoor recreation could be used for so many things that we've talked about today, but really it could be a vehicle for really critical community conversations and organizing outside of the trail. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to talk about a little bit here.
Yeah, and I'm going to just try to hand it off to you as much as we can. I've enjoyed getting to know you, Ian. We had a conversation the other day, and I want to start with sort of your narrative journey to the outdoors. You grew up in Detroit. You hopped around Detroit a little bit, but then at 17, you moved to Oakland County, and that proved to be pivotal. You were grounded at the time. Tell us more.
Yes, I was grounded. I was 17, enjoying some other green things Michigan offers.
Like any good start of a story, right?
A good start of a story. Me being grounded for a couple months happened to coincide with me moving out to Oakland County, deep Oakland County. And that was the first time in my life I had ever had access to just like walking into the woods. I had multiple experiences through school, going up north, having these like one-off camping trips that I really enjoyed, but I don't think I ever had them in succession of each other between, there's years in between them. I heard Micah talking a lot about retention. That interest of mine wasn't retained. So moving out to Oakland County, suddenly I had absolutely nothing to do, was not allowed to see my friends, was not allowed to go to the movies. And I started just walking in the woods. And I was like, wait a minute, this is actually kind of cool. I'm not doing anything, but I'm having a good time. And I remember there was really this moment where I was in this nature preserve out in West Bloomfield and had like a real like Snow White moment where these like 4 deer came out of nowhere and were just locked eyes for like legitimately like 5 minutes. I'm just sitting there like, are we talking? But in that moment, I really realized that, wow, this like experience I'm having building this relationship to the landscape is becoming important to me. And it became something I really prioritized in my life, and everything just kind of went from there.
On the phone the other day, you said something that was interesting, because I wouldn't necessarily attribute this to Detroit, but you said you were very comfortable in that outdoor space based on your experiences in Detroit, because in Detroit there's a lot of vacant open land. Yeah. Talk about how those kind of played together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I had my family, I moved Detroit, all around Metro Detroit, but my family's from the east side of Detroit, and if you've been on the east side of Detroit, there's a lot of open space, there's a lot of vacant space, and the greenery that was just kind of growing in this open space was always a curiosity to me, especially as a child. I remember asking my mom, like, if we could like go on a walk, and she's like, that's just an abandoned neighborhood, like you can't, that's not what you do here. So coming to a space where it was a more intentional green space, that curiosity stayed with me and was really ignited, and I was able to actually go on the walk and explore. And then also growing up in Detroit, I hadn't been all around the park system, but I had been to Belle Isle. And if you're in this room, you know Belle Isle, and you know how gorgeous and stunning it is. It's the second most popular state park in the country, if you didn't know, only behind Niagara Falls. So there were these little things as a child that were keeping me curious, but it wasn't until I had that consistent access that I was able to really expand.
So talk about, connecting with nature, Oakland County. You decide, you want to go to college. How did that play into your decision of even where you wanted to attend school?
Well, I knew I love winter now. Let's say that. At the time, I did not. In fact, I was so confident. I was like, if I go to college that has winter, I'm going to flunk out. Like, there's no way I'm going to go to classes while it's snow. So that informed that decision. But I also, again, had this very new, but like for some reason, I was like, I need this in my life. I knew wherever I went to college, I had to be able to hike and enjoy the outdoors. So I ended up going to Arizona State. At the time, I was also really interested in politics and broadcast journalism. I, at the time, wanted to be the next Anderson Cooper. That changed a little bit. And Arizona State also had a great broadcast journalism program. And if you've never been to Arizona State or Arizona, I mean, it's just mountains everywhere. So all through undergrad, even though I had, at this point, no mind of being in the outdoor space professionally in any way, I continued that relationship building.
You're a man who wears many hats. You were a congressional reporter for like 6 months in DC and decided that wasn't for you. Why was that?
Well, it's Washington, D.C. And I think in this day and age, that says enough. But really, I was having that experience. Again, I was really interested in politics. I like to say I was kind of like forged out of the Black Lives Matter movement. When I was 14, it was Trayvon Martin. When I was 18, graduating high school, it was Michael Brown. During this really formative time of my life, Black politic was at the forefront. It wasn't something I could ignore. And so that's what led me into the political space. But once I was in DC and, I had the congressional press pass and I'm chasing down these lawmakers from all over the place, I had a realization that, yes, politics happen here, but I was far from my community. Like I was so far from Detroit. I wanted to make an impact. That's why I got into what I was doing. And it felt like I was just in a circus, actually. It was DC 2018. So that's Trump's first term. That's, Justice Kavanaugh, things of that nature. Like it was chaos every single day. And I knew that if I wanted to make a change and make an impact in a way that felt tangible to me, it wasn't there. Yeah.
So you moved back to Detroit. You're doing your thing, you're exploring outdoors, and then you start posting about it, and something kind of unexpected happens with that. Fill us in what happened at that point.
Yeah, going back to Detroit, like I said, I was just building this relationship to the outdoors over my college career. And so by the time I got back to DC, I was camping, I was doing all sorts of things, and I was also creating art and, kind of just expanding my network within Detroit. But one of the things I kept posting on Instagram or Twitter, I would just be like, hey, I'm going on this hike. Here's a picture of it. And I was just so shocked at how many people were so curious about where I was going. Like every time I posted a story or a post, I was getting multiple DMs. Hey, could you tell me how you did that? Well, where did you go? How long did it take you? Like there was an interest in what I was doing outside that I just wasn't expecting. And so that led me to make an Instagram page, specifically for that, where I went around whatever trail I was doing, and I made videos that really demystified these spaces, where it wasn't just me there. I would give information like, here's exactly how much I drove, here's how much I paid in gas, here's the trail I took, here's how I felt as a Black person in that space. Things of that nature to really take this thing that, because I realized people were interested, it just felt like a different world to them. And it's so easy when you grow up with those things or you build your own relationship to it to be like, just drive the 2 hours and go to the trail. But if no one has done that before, it somehow feels impossible. So just demystifying that space, and those videos really took off really fast in a way that I wasn't expecting. And that made me even more curious. And so that led me to like making the community organization Amplify Outside. And the first thing we did, we say we, it was just me, but first thing we did was put out a survey. And so the curiosity I was receiving made me really interested in, okay, a lot of people want to do this, but for some reason they're not doing it. Why is that, right? And so I put out a survey that was the Black Michigander Outdoor Survey, where we just asked Black Michiganders, hey, how do you relate to the natural spaces around you? Do you want to tent camp? What keeps you from going outdoors? Do you feel represented in Pure Michigan advertisements? All of this data. And what I didn't realize that I was doing at this time was creating information that wasn't available anywhere else. And so a lot of people in Michigan got really interested in that survey. We got some, news and publicizing about it and things. And yeah, we got hundreds and hundreds of responses. And that survey was used actually in a couple different green projects around the state as well. And yeah, from there, it just really rolled out because, we had the information, which was overwhelmingly just saying, we are interested in the outdoors. Black Michiganders are interested in the outdoor spaces. We are interested in outdoor recreation. What keeps us from it is a lack of information, for one, so we always want to share the information. We want community. We want to see ourselves out there. I don't want to go alone, which I think is sometimes a misconception around the outdoors. You want to be that lone wolf. That's not what the survey showed. And they also said we didn't feel represented. Sorry if anyone in here is from Pure Michigan. But one of the questions was, hey, have you ever seen a Pure Michigan campaign? 99% of respondents said yes. As we know, it's a very successful campaign. And then I asked, do you feel represented in any of that? And 99% said no. So everyone had seen the campaigns. No one felt represented within them. And obviously, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. How did you feel when you got that response? You're wanting to be this agent of change. You weren't going to do it through political reporting. You come back home, you get that response. What's that like? What does that feel like?
I was so confused. I was because I didn't, I just kind of went out and camped. And some of you professionals out here, if you saw the way I was camping, you would be appalled. I wasn't a gear expert. I wasn't a numbers expert. I was just someone who was putting it out there. And so for me, it just really reinforced this idea. One, through that work, I got connected with so many great organizations in Detroit that was already doing that, right? There's Black to the Land Coalition, there's Detroit Outdoors, but it reinforced to me that a big part of this is just visibility. Because if all this work is getting done and all these people are super interested, yet somehow, this is the first time someone's collected this data, there's just a disconnect there that is a pretty simple one in a lot of ways.
So Amplify Outside, you founded this, you created this organization. What are some of the things that you do to reach this community that has this interest, but is sort of how do we start? Where do we begin?
So we started back in 2022, and the things we did, very simple, just group hikes. Just, hey, we're gonna meet up at Belle Isle. I would do some sunrise hikes because I thought it would be cool. I know people come to Belle Isle, but it was one of those but have you ever seen it in the sunrise? And a lot of people said no. And we had 30 people come out, at 6 a.m. to hike around Belle Isle. But one thing that we did that was one of my favorite things that I hope we can continue to do next year is free public sound baths. So one of the things that the outdoors offers is healing. And when we're talking about the Black community, the Black American community, there is a long, long history of trauma with the outdoor space, right? When you think about the history of chattel slavery, sometimes communities will hear outdoors or engaging with the outdoors, and that's the first place their mind goes to. It's not just enjoying the beach and everything. It goes right back to this very traumatic time period that many of us are ancestrally connected to. And so we wanted to heal through the outdoors, and not just heal, but rehabilitate that connection that you have, that narrative that you have of what outdoor space could be for you. So yeah, we would go on Belle Isle. You're gonna hear a lot about Belle Isle because I love it. It's also just, again, when you talk about the history of Black outdoor recreation, Detroit's the blackest city in the nation, and you have this island park the size of Central Park in the middle of the river where all of us have these deep family histories connected to. So Belle Isle, I recognize, was actually a really important space in the state, and I'd say even probably the country, for Black outdoor recreation. And so we hosted these sound baths here. You could come for absolute free, and every single time we had over 100 people show up to come lay on the grass and just listen to sounds in nature. And every time there was a grown man crying that didn't know why he was crying. And it was just so beautiful. But again, just another example of there's this narrative that certain communities aren't interested in this, that certain communities aren't connected to this. And every time that we put on an event or made a post or what have you, that was proven wrong.
I'm also wondering too, that perception that certain communities aren't interested, but also that Detroit isn't possible of like an outdoor experience. How much of it is that as well?
I think it's tons. And if you were at the board member review party last night, or if you've read the board member review, I put an essay in there called Detroit Green, which is really saying there's actually no reason you couldn't think about Detroit like you think about Denver. And there's like a lot of reasons people may say that. Obviously, you know, mountains are great, but not everybody wants to climb a mountain. And mountains are also kind of a less accessible way to enjoy the outdoors as well. But one of the reasons Detroit is not going to be a part of that narrative, or people resist that narrative, is because it's a black city. I mean, think about the narrative. You've came in here with Detroit. You're thinking municipal downfall. You're thinking economic downturn. You're thinking danger. And all of those are, you know, supporting racial prejudices, to be completely honest. And so one of the reasons that Detroit isn't looked at as an outdoor space is because black people are not looked at as outdoor people. And so if we can rehabilitate that narrative, we can do something great for the city and the state as a whole.
I want to talk about another sort of one of the hats that you wear, and that is you get to still sort of do some of your some of your journalism through Great Lakes Now. They're a program through Detroit Public Television. Mm-hmm. We partner with them on the podcast as well. But you have your own show on Great Lakes Now. It's called Ian Outside. What is that about, and what do you hope to convey to viewers?
So I love that program. Support PBS, like shout out the public broadcasting service. But that show is really showing me going and enjoying Michigan, or a Great Lakes outdoor space, and not just the recreation, but also the environmental science that happens in the space. And so we've gone to Isle Royal, we've gone this July, we went to Alpena and toured shipwrecks, and also the NOAA Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. And it's just showing all the things that you can do in this state, and also like the really, really important scientific work that's going on behind it. And I really enjoy it because, you know, it functions for me as a chance to be a representation, right? Like I am this black queer man from Detroit that also is having these experiences, that is backpacking around Isle Royal, that is mountain biking in the Keweenaw Peninsula. And representation isn't everything. I think sometimes people try and stop short there. You do have to actually increase the access. But there's been so many times I've had like someone random come up to me and go like, I saw you on that show and it made me want to go there and this and that. And it again demystifies the space. Like if I can do it, maybe you can too. Yeah.
That's cool. I feel like so much of what you do with your art, with your journalism, with your community organizing is sort of that demystifying. And I want to talk a little bit about an aspect of your art that I just find really fascinating. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of this idea of connecting all of Michigan, like not thinking of Detroit as like separate from, you know, the natural beauty, but like connecting it. And you had a really cool art project that connected the UP specifically to Detroit. Mm-hmm. How?
So I guess I'll say one of the ways I look to connect these spaces is really through things completely outside of outdoor recreation, right? I think there's a lot that connects Detroit and Michigan's rural communities that are political, that are environmental justice questions, and looking to the UP coming from as a Detroiter. And I'll actually say this because I've asked multiple people this now, and they've all agreed, multiple black folks that explore Michigan, and we all say we love the UP. Yes, it's gorgeous, but we also say we feel more comfortable there. There's something about the UP that just makes us feel, you know, a little, you know, lets our guard down a little bit. And one of the things that myself and a fellow organizer were talking about was that the labor history of these two spaces. So you have blue collar work up in the UP, you have iron mining, you have copper mining. And if you go down to Detroit, we're not mining, but we're working with metal in a different way, which is the steel of the automobile industry. And so it's like thinking artistically, how do we connect these realities through our labor materials? So what I did was I took this huge archive I have of different landscape Polaroids. I love taking Polaroid for landscape because it's not just an image of the place, but it's an object that has seen the place, that has been affected by the place. So it's kind of like an artifact. I love that. Yeah, it's like an artifact in that way. You know, when it's cold, it gets blue. When it's warm, it gets a little pink. So I took all this archive of Polaroids and I made custom steel frames for them and then used chemical patina to make them look like copper or iron or rusted steel to kind of visually bring together, yes, the beautiful Michigan natural landscape, but also here's the things that connect us outside of that. Yeah.
Love that. I should say, if you have a question for Ian, get that ready because we're wrapping up. I do want to sort of circle back and kind of zoom out, Ian. Mm-hmm. You have all these different branches. They're all in a way connected to the environment. If there was like a takeaway for us today, how would you sort of leave us? What sort of advice or takeaway would you give us through your experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say just remember that the outdoors is like deeply political. I mean, that is the only reason that I'm like sitting here today, that I got into this. Yes, I enjoyed outdoor recreation, but really I recognize outdoor recreation as a vehicle to these much larger, much more pressing conversations. And when you think about how to increase access to nature, like how do you get someone who's never been camping up camping, or you don't expect them to see you there, you have to consider the material reality of them back home. Like I said yesterday, like take it from the trail to the neighborhood. How does this camping trip align with something like energy justice? I was at a fellowship for environmental justice over the summer, and the first place we went was the Public Housing Museum. And a lot of people don't think about environmental justice as public housing, but that's the reality. And so I think if you're in this space and you're in the outdoors, we all know it's fun, it's something for you to have leisure time, but what you're also doing is creating community. You're taking people to spaces, you're bringing them together, and as soon as you create a space of people, you then have the opportunity to organize and start conversations that are really critical and really important, and that they can take back home and hopefully improve their material conditions so that they can better enjoy outdoor recreation, the leisure that everyone is so excited, especially here, to partake in.
I think that gets a round of applause here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Ian and Dan, thank you so much for joining us at the Outdoor Summit. Really find your conversations inspirational, no matter whether it's the two of you individually, together, out in the community doing the awesome work that you do. We appreciate you and we appreciate the insight that you bring. Thanks again for joining us for another session. Support provided by the C.S. Mott Foundation, thought leadership by Parallel Solutions, and production by Anna Moya. Catch you all at the end of the trail.